Venus and star blessings, everybody. I have a lot to share today. It is about Venus in Scorpio, but there are a lot of different layers I wish to unpack. I'm going to do my best to make it as clear as possible, as concise as possible, and as objective as possible. And I say that because I am personally feeling extremely overwhelmed emotionally, spiritually, from my heart, from my soul, with everything that is going on in the Middle East, in Palestine. I'm not afraid to talk about it. Many people are being silenced. There is a narrative taking place that is distorting the truth and the reality. There are many lies, there are many things being concealed, and there are many things being revealed as well. And it's all in the stars. As above, so below. So I'm going to unpack some ancient themes or passages. And I'm going to also unpack a little bit about the Venus star point. And I'm going to share a little bit about my perspective on the truth of things as well. It sort of is my perspective, but on the other hand, it's not. It's just really my own seeing with my own eyes as to what is actually taking place. And for those of you that know me, you are very well aware that I am a humanitarian. I don't shy away from speaking up on the hard truths and on what may be controversial and what may be create, if you like, a negative response by certain individuals towards myself and what I have to say and share. I did this all through COVID. Many of you know this, and many of you were on the same page. And here we are again with another matter that I feel probably even more passionate about. And I feel that the voice that God has given me is a gift, and that I have some kind of duty to speak to the truth, because I'm not afraid of receiving backlash or people criticizing me or projecting their own stuff onto me. If I was, I would play a very different role and present very different things. But because I'm not driven by the material world, and I'm not fearful of the material world, because my faith is unshakable when it comes to the divine source creation to all things, and I only answer to God. I don't answer to people, as it were. Now, I know that's a very intense introduction, but that's really the place of where everything is coming from within me at the moment relative to what I'm going to speak to. Now, I said that a lot of people are being silenced, because they are. A lot of content is being removed, hidden, destroyed, and that is across the board. From social media to documents to videos to footage to pictures to people's drones being destroyed. You know, it just, the list goes on. There is an individual that you can follow on Instagram, and I'm just going to give you his name, and you will see the hardcore truth of what is actually happening in Palestine, if you so wish. His name is Motaz Motaz, and the surname Azaza is spelled Azaiza. Now, this individual is photographing on ground and filming on ground every single thing that is going on and has been going on for the past 7 weeks. He's on Instagram. He's got 16.3 million followers, which is a lot. They have tried to destroy a lot of his content on various social media platforms, including trying to destroy the drone that he was using to photograph things. It just goes on and on and on, but he's managed to keep a lot of it on Instagram and Facebook. I warn you, what you'll see is very disturbing, because he's literally filming on ground the actual killings and deaths that are going on. Now, I just want to outline once again, this is not about taking sides. This is about crimes against humanity, period. I wouldn't wish harm on any soul. It doesn't matter where they come from, what they believe, what they look like, what their culture is about, whatever gender they are. None of those matters are important. What is important is that I stand for humanity, actually. And so does this particular individual. And he has chosen to reveal it all firsthand. And he's come close to being killed numerous times. So he's literally a brave, one of the bravest warriors, you could say, and clearly born to do this particular thing that he's doing in his life at the moment. So if you wish to open your eyes, and it is harsh and it will hurt, but it will also make you very aware of what's actually going on. So I recommend you follow him. Just want to show you this picture. And this is, just the tip of the iceberg. Okay, but here is one picture that I just found just a couple of days ago. This is not a fake picture. This is not somebody's AI construction. This is a real picture. And this is mild in comparison to the reality of what's going on. Now, a lot of what's going on is most certainly attributed to Pluto. Pluto is about to reach the 29th degree, which is an anaretic degree. He's been here before, and he will go back here again. So there is a complete and utter total destruction of many things on the earth plane with Pluto's last tracks in the sign of Capricorn. We've talked about this over the last couple of years, really. So there's no point going into it again. But I guess from the bigger picture perspective, it is important to realize that this is, part of the bigger picture of what is happening on an evolutionary level for humanity. Now, one thing I do want to say is that what's going on in the Middle East, the fact of the matter is that the majority of people on the planet prior to the eruption on the 7th of October, prior to that, most people didn't even know what was going on there, had no clue or didn't care. I'm bringing this up because this has to do with Pluto and Capricorn. The issues and the crimes of humanity have been going on for decades. They didn't start on the 7th of October. They've been going on for decades. But the difference now is that the level of exposure to what is actually happening is unstoppable, literally unstoppable. And it has opened a lot of people's eyes to things that they were completely oblivious to. And there are still a lot of people trying to close their eyes to it and ignore it because it's not affecting them personally. I wrote a little post just the other day about myself, explaining that I share this material both on social media or on YouTube or wherever, because I feel that I have a duty to stand for humanity and to stand for truth. I've always felt that since I was a child. I can tell you stories when I was at school where I was the kid that would support a kid that was being bullied in whatever form that was, and I would therefore be excluded from the popular groups of kids and end up with no friends because I was supporting the person that was being bullied. And I can tell you that there was countless examples like that. And I had no fear of that. I had no fear of not being popular and not having these fake circle of friends. So I'm sharing that because I want you to understand where I'm coming from, that this is what God has imprinted in my heart. So I've been like this my entire life. And I certainly wouldn't shy away from all of this at this point in time for any reason or for anyone. So this is how I'm made. This is how my father raised me. And I couldn't live with myself if I didn't speak on truth, no matter what the so-called consequences are in the material plane, because I know that God has always got my back. Okay, so astrologically, as I was just starting to say, big part of this, of course, is Pluto. Now, Venus's ingress into Scorpio, we'll go into that in a moment because that's huge. And I have some pictures I want to show you as well, which come from Rumen Kolev's work. It is very complicated. I won't be able to go into it to extreme depths because I'll be here for hours and I won't be doing that. So I want to try and keep it as concise as possible. But I just want to say that today, being the 7th of December, you see here we have the Sun and Mars very close together, right, in Sagittarius. Now, if we go to, well, first of all, this is the tropical zodiac, okay? And this is pretty much a one-dimensional chart, okay? So we're just seeing the ecliptic. The ecliptic is the circle right on the outside where all the signs of the zodiac are placed. That's the ecliptic, meaning that is the sun's pathway, okay? And all the planets are tracking the zodiac according to their position relative to the ecliptic, which is the sun's pathway. Now, if we go to the Babylonian chart, this is Rumen Kolev's program. This is a chart that has several layers to it. All I want to point to for today, however, is that if you cast your eyes over here, let me just grab an arrow to highlight. So there is the sun, okay, and there is Mars. Now you can see it's highlighted in grey, which is indicative of Mars still being invisible. I've spoken about Mars being invisible for the last couple of months because I knew instinctively and intuitively, I just knew this was going to be a really, really big deal. And indeed, it has been and it is, because Mars invisible, apart from many, many things, absolutely speaks to the hidden agendas and to this so-called war. I say so-called war because it's one-sided. It's one side that has ample ammunition, highest technology, loads of people involved in the military and army, and the other side is basically women and children, defenseless and being murdered. That's the reality. Now, if one side is saying we are trying to eliminate a particular entity, a particular group of individuals, then go find those individuals and do what you need to. Go to battle with those individuals if you wish. There is no excuse and no justification for killing over 20,000 people, and many of those being children, infants, babies. There just is no justification. If you can swallow that and accept that and say that's okay, then I really don't have any words to say to you except that's on you. That's something that your soul will carry through. So at the moment, being the 7th of December, and I will sidetrack because as I said from the very beginning, I'm very passionate about what's going on and very disturbed about what's going on, extremely disturbed in the deepest core of my soul. So forgive me if I express some emotion here and there. It's very hard not to. If you look over here, I know it's very faint and difficult to see, but there is a star called Antares. That star is a royal star. It's the 15th star in the Babylonian set of stars. It's considered a very powerful star, in other words, and it sits in the Scorpion. Okay, you can faintly see here. I know it's difficult to see, but just imagine there is a scorpion right here. You can see the symbol Scorpio here on the outer wheel. This, by the way, is the fixed Babylonian zodiac. Okay, so the position of the planets are positioned as per the Babylonian zodiac, which is not the same as the sidereal, by the way. It seems similar, but it's not the same. So Antares, which is at Scorpio, and if I put my little cursor on the star here, if you cast your eyes, why won't it let me do that? Let me see. Just close that. Okay, there we go. So there's Antares. And if you look to this little box down here when I put my arrow on Antares, what's it saying? It's saying 14 degrees, 15 degrees actually is where we need to be, right? That little dot right there, tiny little minuscule dot, that's Antares. 15 degrees Scorpio, Babylonian fixed, which is at the 25th degree of the Babylonian tropical and 10 degrees Sag of the Ptolemaic tropical. Just in front of it is Mars, isn't it? Now, where's Mars in the Babylonian zodiac? It is at 15 degrees Scorpio. And there's the Sun at 23 degrees Babylonian zodiac Scorpio. So the Sun and Mars, as I just showed you on Solar Fire over here, there they are in Sag, right? This is the tropical zodiac. In the Babylonian fix, they are in Scorpio. Okay, sign behind, obviously. So if you think about the tropical zodiac at the moment in the sky, the Sun and Mars are in Sagittarius. Mars is invisible. Doesn't matter which zodiac you use, Mars is invisible. That's an astronomical phenomena, period, regardless of where it sits in the zodiac. So the Sun and Mars in Sagittarius, in tropical zodiac, in the sky, well, behind that are the constellations and the fixed stars, which is this chart that you see here on the screen. So today, being the 7th of December, there's a conjunction between transiting Mars and Antares. That's the point I'm trying to get to. Now, this is all Scorpio energy. right? We're talking about the Scorpion constellation. We're talking about the sun being in Scorpio. We're talking about Mars being in Scorpio. And we're talking about Antares, which is a star in Scorpio as well. Now, this star is a very, very powerful star. It has a long backstory depending on, which level of history you want to go into. There's lots from Mesopotamian, Babylonian, there's Persian, there's quite a few. But I want to try and keep it simple. It is a star that is recognized to be associated with war, death, blood, military personnel, army, destruction, and so forth. That kind of says it all, really, doesn't it? It is also a star that denotes the breast of the Scorpion goddess Ishara. Now, just remember that point that I just made, because I'm going to show you something in a moment. So this alignment today, which is there for, you could say 1 or 2 days, is quite a poignant passage collectively, cosmically, collectively. I wouldn't say it's anything to throw a party over. I would say it's a very, very dangerous passage. Now, I know that since the ceasefire stopped, the level of, well, there's no other way to put it, but to say the level of bombing and killings has blown it's even bigger. It's even more than what it was before. So it's become more aggressive. It's just relentless, ongoing. I don't know what words to use, because it really upsets me when I talk about it or think about it. But here we have, just days after ceasefire ended, this alignment. So I expect, sadly, a lot worse things to be occurring. So what I want to show you here is this. Now, imagine Venus is in Scorpio. Okay, actually, before I go to that, so we've got this alignment here happening in the background, as it were, but do not mistake the background as being something that's not as important, not as significant, or not as powerful. It's probably more deeply rooted into more fated, more difficult things to shift out of that energy, if you like. So Venus is in Scorpio. She is a morning star still. She became the morning star August of this year at 20 degrees of Leo. And she's moved on in the Zodiac, and she's now reached Scorpio. She is forming a conjunction to Pallas Athena, but that will become exact on the 14th of December. So about a week's time, they will be exactly conjunct. Venus will be in Scorpio until she entered Scorpio around the 5th of December, and she leaves Scorpio on the 30th of December. So about 25 days. She is a morning star. She is in Scorpio. She is forming a conjunction with, relative to the morning star. The morning star, her primary deity is Pallas Athena. This is the asteroid Pallas Athena, but it is the same symbol. So Venus is catching up with her own deity, if you like, being the morning star. So that's a very significant alignment relative to what is going on the Earth up in the Middle East. I will try to bring some points for us to consider on a personal level towards the end, but I just want to cover these points for now. Venus will oppose Uranus on the 21st of December. And then just as she gets to the last degree of Scorpio, 29, by that stage, Pluto will be 29, and they will be sextile each other. Now, sextile is always associated with some type of opportunity. So I'm praying that that will bring something good across relative to the events that are going on, and even just to our own self as well. Now, the fixed star Antares, who sits in the Scorpion constellation, is associated with the goddess Ishara, as I said before. And it's quite fascinating. There's Ishara here in this part of Venus's cycle, which is when Venus is invisible, right? Now, Venus is not invisible at the moment, but the point being that this star Antares that is lining up with Mars at the moment in the Babylonian Zodiac in the sign of Scorpio corresponds to this Gorgon, Persephone, Ishara, Ereshkigal, Venus, right? Venus has all these different deities. Okay, this is not my graph. This is Rumen Kolev's graph, right? So I can absolutely not take credit for it. This is his work, which is phenomenal, and no one else has done this work but him. Now, I want to try and keep this simple. See where it says here, morning first. This is where Venus first appeared as the morning star on August of this year, a few months ago. See where it says retrograde. So this is Venus moving around this graph, if you like, in this particular manner. There's her deity Athena that corresponds with her, and there's Ishtar of Akkad, because Venus morning star corresponds to Ishtar of Akkad. Akkad is a city in Mesopotamia, Babylonia. As she continues to move, she will become what's called morning last. In other words, around about May of 2024, Venus will be seen for the last time before she goes invisible. When she goes invisible, she sits within this zone here, which is associated to Gorgona. Mythology to the Gorgona is pretty intense. I don't have time to go into it. Some of you may be aware of it. It does connect to Pallas Athena. She's got the Gorgon on her, what's that thing called? I've just lost the words. That armor metal round thing. Sorry, no, that's not the right terminology, but I think you all know what I mean. She's got the owl on her shoulder, she's got the spear, she's got the headpiece, and then she's got that round protective metal, I've just lost the words. Well, that metal thing that she's holding, it has the Gorgona on there, okay? Hence, Pallas Athena being associated to the morning star Venus. So before she leaves her appearance in the sky, because at the moment when you wake up in the morning, she's still rising as the morning star, right? And I don't live on the eastern side, I live on the western, so unfortunately I haven't been able to see that gorgeous diamond sparkling in the sky every morning. As I said, in May, she will be the morning last, May of 2024, and she goes invisible. When she's invisible, she's in this zone here, and then she becomes the evening star, right, which will be in Gemini around June of 2024. This is when she gets into this cycle. This is a complex diagram that has a lot of different layers and levels to it, but all I wanted to point out to you is that the energy of Mars being conjunct Antares in the Scorpio constellation ties into what I was just showing you here, with Venus being Ishara. connecting to the Gorgon, which is pretty gruesome, pretty intense, pretty dark, and a lot of just a lot of dark things happen during that time. So it's not a coincidence that Mars happens to be in this part of the Zodiac, conjunct Antares in Scorpio, while we have these war crimes taking place, bloodshed everywhere. And I mean bloodshed everywhere. Children's limbs, heads, arms being blown off. I've seen actual footage of this where a mother or a brother or a sister or a father will be picking up whatever remains from their child or their sibling or whatever it is. Can you imagine? Can you just imagine being in that position? We can't even imagine it. It's so beyond horrific. We have some sort of protective mechanism in our psyche that projects something to protect us from perhaps feeling and absorbing that kind of horror and pain. It's because it's unbearable. Yet these people are living that reality as we speak and have been for the last 7 weeks. There is no excuse. There is no justification. So, as we go back to the basic chart, if you like, we just find something else. And Mercury, of course, is going to go retrograde, but I think I'll come back and speak to that separately. Now, I did share this post on YouTube community, I believe. So Venus in Scorpio, Pallas Athena in Scorpio, and the asteroid goddess Persephone is also in Scorpio at the moment as well. Now, Persephone is strongly associated to Pluto and Ceres. She was the daughter of Ceres. Pluto abducted Persephone, and so forth. Most of you are aware of that myth, so I will not unpack it. But I do believe that it is significant that Persephone is also in Scorpio at the moment, because the goddess Persephone, being associated to Ceres and Pluto, obviously speaks to abduction, loss, grief, very difficult passages, the process of experiencing death around you, within you. It's a very, very, very intense passage. And so here she is lining up with Venus and Pallas Athena in Scorpio as well. So there's 3 very significant goddesses in the sign of Scorpio. So even though Scorpio season is over, it's kind of not really, because we have Venus, Pallas, and Persephone all in Scorpio. So they have got something to show us and to teach us. And also from the Babylonian Zodiac, the Sun and Mars are still in Scorpio, and Mars lines up with Antares today, which is a star inside the Scorpion constellation, which corresponds to the goddess Ishara, which corresponds to the Gorgon, which is about death and matters of those kinds of experiences. So you can see these, and I'm only unpacking the tip of the iceberg, but from what I'm showing and from what I'm speaking to, hopefully it is clear as to why the matters on the earth, namely in those areas of the world, are at the level that they are at. That you're not going to have these passages without these sorts of signatures, portals, stars, planets, and so forth, being in these alignments. It's literally as above, so below. It does concern me a little bit what will occur when Venus opposes Uranus, because Uranus in evolutionary astrology corresponds to trauma, and there is immense trauma taking place on the earth plane in the Middle East at the moment. And that trauma is the energy of that is going to exist for forever. It's not going to go away in that part of the world. It's going to be buried in the land there. And so if for some reason the 2 million people in Palestine are removed from their own land, then the people that take over that land will forever, for infinity, be dealing with the bloodshed and trauma that will be rooted in that land. Now, people who view this from a very one-sided religious, political level will not even entertain the comment that I just made. It would not penetrate through their consciousness at all. But even if it doesn't, it's still a fact. So 3 goddesses taking us through a quite intense passage. And I think from a personal perspective, this is bringing up our own unconscious psychic imprints, our own unconscious emotions, material, in very complex ways. It's very difficult to speak to that very specifically because it's going to depend on each soul in terms of what this brings up. Yes, there is a general description of what Venus in Scorpio can activate in all of us, and obviously the most common themes are deep personal introspection, some type of transformation in our journey of love and or relationships. And that's a very simple explanation, right? But that's all I can say when I don't know you or your chart, for instance. In any case, everyone has a Venus Scorpio star point in their chart unless they are over 100 years old. So wherever that Venus Scorpio star point sits in your own birth chart, well, Venus is going to animate that Venus Scorpio star point, and it depends where it sits in the pentagram, and it depends where it sits in your chart as to what this is going to highlight. But basically, there are 5 Venus star points. We superimpose them on our birth chart, and it looks like a star, literally, and there is a head, 2 arms, and 2 legs, if you like, very simply put. The head of the pentagram for each of us defines literally our own personal Venus star point. That is what Venus imprinted in our heart and soul before we were born. And the arms and the legs correspond to different facets of how that star operates. For instance, the main head of the pentagram, the main star. So you might have the Scorpio Venus star point as the head of your pentagram. I actually do. And for me, it's in the 10th house, which is why I'm speaking about these matters publicly. And for me, I'm a morning star Venus, which is the warrior goddess. And perhaps that's another reason why I'm so open and upfront about matters of crimes against humanity and injustices against humanity. So Venus in Scorpio, tracking over your Scorpio Venus star point, will animate and activate your Scorpio Venus star point. And that can be a really positive thing, by the way, because the Venus star point itself inherently brings about what you are most gifted with through the goddess Venus. So it would be an opportunity to really attract, because Venus is the attraction principle. It can be a moment where you can really attract into your life, into your heart, into your soul, the very things that Venus has gifted you with, from the point of view of being able to enact them, you know, to cultivate them, to understand them, to learn more about these deeper components of what you've been gifted with internally. So that's a positive, obviously, just on an individual and personal level. But it is Venus in Scorpio, and Venus in Scorpio is in her detriment. Let's not forget that. But she is a morning star at the moment still, and she is a morning star is literally the warrior goddess, which is what we are seeing being acted upon on the earth. Now, even though there are these cataclysmic, horrific war crimes going on against humanity, there are also, on the flip side to that, millions of people that are coming together to support and to assist and to create a revolution for these souls. So there are a lot of good things happening, but we are mostly bombarded with a one-sided narrative that's projecting a very specific picture on a group of people. And that could be said for Jewish communities as well, because they're being caught up and swept up in this and being attacked and labeled as something that they're not as well. So I'm personally speaking to very specific leaders and the military and systems. I'm not speaking to humanity that may belong to a particular culture, religion, or country. But we cannot dispute or deny or pretend that there is not a genocide taking place. There's a lot of Jewish people that have fled Israel. I mean, a lot. About 500,000 have actually fled Israel because they cannot tolerate what is taking place. They don't want to be a part of it. So once again, this is not about bashing one side. I'm speaking very specifically to unconscious individuals that are very conscious, however, of their evil acts, pure and simple. So we have the rest of December, really. Venus will be in Scorpio till the end of December. A lot of this, of what is going on, what we are seeing is certainly not going to end by December. I don't think. I could be wrong. I hope I am wrong. But I feel that this passage of Venus in Scorpio is going to create a greater intensity. On the other hand, it can also expose a lot of things as well, because Scorpio is the sign that corresponds to zooming in and exposing what is being deliberately hidden or unconsciously hidden, for that matter. So I expect a lot more things to be revealed while Venus is in Scorpio, in other words. The opposition that she will create to Uranus, now, as I said, it speaks to trauma. And then I went off to another point that I was making about the land. And remember, Taurus is the is the archetype that corresponds to land. And here we have Uranus in Taurus, and that's Venus's sign. So there's going to be a reception between Uranus and Venus. It's not a mutual reception, it's a one-way reception. But it's still a reception. It is an opposition. Now, oppositions tend to become polarized energies. Uranus certainly corresponds to trauma, but then on the other hand, Uranus also corresponds to sudden breakthroughs. So let's see what that brings, if anything. Perhaps the sextile to Pluto can be a passage, at least from our own personal perspective. Well, when Venus was in Libra not so long ago, towards the end of Libra, she was square Pluto. So something might have happened there in your world of relationships that produced something difficult, might have created some sort of conflict where you perhaps didn't expect it to, or maybe you did expect it, but you were hoping that it wouldn't happen, or whatever it is. But Venus square Pluto can be, just on a very basic mundane level, it can just be a clash of values, with a friend of yours. Venus rules friends as well. It's not just our lovers, it's our friends as well. Can even be a family member, because Venus ultimately speaks to anyone or anything that we love. So there might have been some pretty tense things going on when Venus was towards the end of Libra squaring Pluto. But towards the end of December, something might be salvaged, or some sort of harmony or peace or something better might come out of a situation that occurred that was quite difficult when Venus was square Pluto. So the difficulty would have been when Venus was square Pluto. The opportunity will come when Venus is going to be sextile Pluto, which is at the end of December. So just keep an open mind towards that as well. Okay, I will leave it there, and I will come back and try and speak to Mercury going retrograde, which will track right back to, I think, 22 degrees of Sagittarius. It goes as far back as that. It forms a conjunction to the galactic center. So there's quite a few interesting things going on with Mercury. Mercury is an evening star at the moment. It's at its maximum elongation, meaning it's the furthest away from the sun at the moment. So let me show you, for example, just watch what happens as I animate the chart moving forward. I just want to show you when the sun sets. See how the sun has the sun is below the horizon. This is the horizon. So the sun has set here. And look at Mercury. It's setting as well, but the sun has already set. So might be able to see Mercury. Depends where you are on the earth, really. Anyway, that's an important thing if you love observing the sky. That could be just something really nice to kind of look at. But anyway, this is what's going on. Mercury is an evening star, and Mercury evening star connects to Hermes, whereas Mercury morning star connects to the god Apollo. So very different energies, just like Venus has different deities, and different descriptions when she's an evening star, and different deities and different descriptions when she's a morning star. Well, the same goes for Mercury. It's just we're talking about Mercury as opposed to Venus. And given that Mercury is going to go retrograde in Capricorn and go back into Sagittarius and is an evening star, you know, these later signs, they definitely correspond much more to worldly perceptions or events or information, teachings or wisdom. You know, these are the later signs. If it was Mercury here in the earlier signs like Aries, Taurus, Gemini, that's more of a personal, mercurial energy, right, relative to the archetypes. But Mercury's in these later signs, going retrograde in Capricorn, and will go back into Sag, which will speak to Capricorn, the status quo, the consensus reality, and Sagittarius obviously at a more evolved level. It's got to do with wisdom, but at a more consensus reality, it will have very much to do with people's self-righteous position, religious beliefs, and so forth, and how that unfortunately can bring about division as opposed to unity. But I'll come back and talk about that. I will sign off for now. It's my final message. I think my final message would have to be, don't forget that we all have a responsibility with our own humanity. And not acknowledging what's going on and not caring about what's going on is actually somewhat inhumane. I know that life goes on, and I know that we must carry on and conduct our businesses, our family matters, and so on and so forth. That's fine. We have to have some kind of balance, but I think we also have a duty to acknowledge certain things that are going on and offer support in whatever capacity that is. I think that's not only important but necessary for our own soul. You know, God is watching everything, and I'm not talking about some man behind the clouds sitting up in a chair holding a little book making a judgment. That's a narrative, perspective, whatever you want to call it, that's been created through certain indoctrinations in order to reduce fear. This is not about inducing fear. This is about actually remembering that we are all evolving. The earth is evolving, and evolution means becoming more conscious. That's literally what it's about. The more unconscious we remain, the more we create division, and the more we project our own darkness onto everything and everybody else around us and refuse to look at our own darkness. So to bring forth compassion, humanity, is a big, big part of realizing, in fact, how evolved or unevolved one is. See you all soon.